Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. We're going to be reading the next 4 laws or the next 4 chapters in 12 Laws of the Universe. I originally did say in my first video that I was going to be doing 2 sections at a time, but in light of how short these chapters are, I don't know about you, but this book is very straight to the point and very easy to understand, and it's a very short, easy read. So I figured we can just break it up into 2 more segments and find out what all of the 12 laws are so that we can move on and start putting some of these things into our lives each day if we are not already. So in light of that, let's go ahead and get started. So I believe that we left off, let me just double check here. So I think we either left off on chapter 5 or 6 in our last video. I'm just checking my piece of paper here that has... Okay, so chapter 6 is where we're going to be starting off today. So we'll read 6, 7, 8, 9, and that will leave us with 10, 11, 12, and then the conclusion or the wrap up to the book. So 6, law number 6, the law of cause and effect. Every action has a consequence. The principle that one's intentions and actions influence one's future is so omnipresent that it appears in many other spiritual traditions. Karma is a popular example. I believe that almost all cultures in the world have some sort of you reap what you sow or what goes around comes around in their lexicon. Going back to the first universal law, we know that everything we think or do is not in isolation because we are all connected energetically. Whether it is good or bad, our thoughts and actions will eventually be reflected back to us in some way. Shallow men believe in luck, strong men believe in cause and effect. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If you want to be loved, love the people around you. If you want abundance, give generously. If you want to live a healthy life, you must eat well and exercise regularly. If this is so simple, why do we have such a hard time with it? I think the awareness of our own actions, thoughts, and intentions have a lot to do with this. When it comes to our ideas, we are often in a self-driving state. So we don't realize there is an opportunity to update them for more favorable results. Awareness is key. The problem is that we are not always aware of our thinking patterns. And then we want to know how the situation ultimately happened to us. Screaming, "Why me?" is a low vibration victim mentality. And if it is not controlled, it will continue to provide an experience that makes us feel victimized. Instead of "why me?", take a deep breath and ask a more empowering question. What did I do for this? Be honest with yourself when answering this question. When we take responsibility for our situation instead of becoming their victims, we begin to see that we are not puppets. In fact, we are puppet masters. It is about taking responsibility for your life and being aware of aligning your thoughts and actions with the results you seek to achieve. Advice. Look at your life and see how your intentions, thoughts, and actions contribute to what you experience. Next time, seize the opportunity to make a better decision and then watch those negative situations turn into positive ones. One of the simplest laws in the universe, the law of cause and effect, tells us that all actions have corresponding reactions. Of course, you know this when it comes to the physical aspects of the world. However, you may not have considered how this law applies to the spiritual aspect of our universe. Your spiritual life affects the world around you, causing positive or negative reactions. Likewise, your physical environment affects your spirituality for better or for worse. Ask yourself what kind of relationship you see between the spiritual and the physical aspects, and how you might want to change them. Relatively simple, this law highlights the direct relationship between actions and events. The important thing to note here is that we usually cannot see the effects immediately, but they will eventually appear. What you put out there may not come back to you in that moment, But that vibration, that energy you put out there, has a ripple effect. If you're coming from a place of anger or resentment, if you put that energy out there, you'll eventually be affected as a result. Literally, we reap what we sow. Everything we experience in life is the result of a chain of events or activities. The law of cause and effect, also known as the law of karma, stipulates that every action will cause a reaction, and no matter what you put in, no matter how bad or good it will come back to you. To take advantage of the power of this law, be aware that your actions and decisions will affect not only yourself, but everyone around you. So focus on sending out only good vibrations. And Chapter 7, the law of compensation. We are rewarded for right action. You will be compensated based on what you give. This is an extension of the law of cause and effect, specifically for compensation in the material world, good things such as abundance, relationships, and opportunity. This law states that we will be blessed based on the good deeds we do and the value we provide. When we show generosity to others, we will be rewarded back generously. Remember, there are many forms of compensation, not just cash, a beautiful house, a Ferrari, or a reward for relaxing on the beach. Compensation also comes in the form of blessings, such as good health, loyal friends, loving families, teachers or mentors, job opportunities, $1 million ideas, etc. Many times we give others what we think they deserve. This mentality is good, but it cannot be transformed into abundance. However, if we change our mindset to over-delivery and exceed expectations, we will be compensated accordingly. So many times, I think what the author is saying is that we give just enough what they think they've earned. And instead, I think the author is saying, give more than you think they need. Give more than you think they deserve. And he's not just talking monetarily. It can be the easiest, simplest gesture. If you're in a position where you can help people monetarily, awesome. If you're not, awesome as well. It's the thought that counts. It truly is. The littlest thing can make the biggest difference in someone's life, and you may never know it, and that's okay. That's not always the point. It does come back to you. No, whether you believe that or not, it does come back to you. If you believe that the bad things that you might do, the bad things, the unconscious asleep things, the ignorant things come back to you, why is it so hard to believe that good things can come back to you? If good things aren't coming back to you, you have to start thinking about where your mind is all the time. You could be stopping those own good things for yourself and you don't even realize it. Advice. You get what you put into life, so whatever you do, do your best and strive to be the best you can be. Be generous and kind, and then when it comes back to you, accept it graciously with open arms. According to the law of compensation, you will receive what you put out. This is similar to the law of attraction, but focuses on the idea that compensation can take many forms. For example, if you get a lot of money, then you might think you are getting rewarded. However, depending on your lifestyle, your large wealth may lead to a worse life rather than a better life. Essentially, you reap what you sow. This law reminds you to be careful with others, even with the planet. For example, to work with this law in a way that attracts or compensates love and support, ask yourself, where am I called today to serve and support others? It instills trust in us that we will be compensated for our work as long as we're open to receiving in all the many ways that the universe can deliver. What needs to be clear is that compensation in this area is not limited to employment agreements or monetary compensation. Rather, it is about getting compensation for all your contributions to the world around you, including the love, joy, and kindness you spread. Everything is rewarded. Now, Chapter 8, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Energy is always moving and always changing. We have talked about, I think, all of these things in Living Untethered. Living Untethered breaks it down to very minute details when it comes to the scientific aspect and the energetic aspect. This one puts it in simpler terms. If you didn't catch Living Untethered and you want a more in-depth understanding, definitely check that out. I did make the last segment was that book, or obviously you can read the book yourself. But I do think even though parts of it can get really detailed and maybe a little bit harder to understand, especially if that type of stuff is not your thing, it's still, we inherently know it somewhere in here, and it's just important to know that it works and why it works and how to make it work for you rather than just how it works. I think that somewhere inside, that part does not matter quite as much. All right. This is one of my favorites when I'm feeling especially stuck. Thus far, we've talked about the importance of energy and maintaining a high vibration. In fact, that each one sounds good, but we all know that life throws us curveballs that just plain suck. If we only had the primary 7 universal laws, we'd be living in fear of negative situations. This law reminds us that there's nothing to be scared of because energy is usually in flux. And better still, you've got the power to transmute or change it. The superpower law. This may sound as if you have a superpower, and that's because you do. It is one of those things that sound obnoxiously easier than it is. You would have heard energy flows where attention goes, which is the gist of this law. Who is the thinker of your thoughts? You are. So by exercising your power to activate thoughts that serve you instead of those that don't, you can transmute negative vibes first into neutral ones, then into the happier territory. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth, our freedom. Viktor Frankl. Living Untethered talks about raising your vibration as well and removing blockages and who really is the thinker of your thoughts. Yes, it's you in there, but who is you in there? So if you want to go deeper into that as well, check that book out too. This seems almost like it's not a summary, but almost like a Cliff's Notes for Living Untethered. This breaks it down very simply. And if that's your jam, that's okay, because I'm not always in the mood for an in-depth and detailed read. Remember Dwayne, the annoying barista from the first law or the first chapter? Let's say he got fired from his job and then he comes home to see that his boyfriend Ben has left him. Shitty things happen, and there's sure to be some low frequency thoughts that arise, like anger, resentment, sadness, and so on. These emotions are valid and should be acknowledged. But there's a difference between acknowledging and wallowing. I always tell my kids that. Don't sit in it. Let yourself feel it, but don't sit in your shit, basically. I read a really good saying a long time ago, and it stuck with me. If you're stuck in hell, don't stop for a motel. Like, don't stay there. Just don't stay there too long. It's not good for you. It doesn't solve anything. It actually adds what Michael Singer calls samskaras, which are things that you have not dealt with simply because they don't resonate with you. And that causes blockages in your energy. I did learn something from that book. All right. Eventually, the pity party gets to an end, and Dwayne must pick himself up again by upgrading his thoughts to ones that serve him, instead of ones that keep him stuck at the pity party. Maybe he didn't like that job anyway, so this just means he'll have more time to focus on finding a better one. As for Ben, he was such a mess that Dwayne would spend hours cleaning up his messes after coming home from his shift. So now his thoughts begin to shift, wherein he can spend more time enjoying his clean home. This energy shift doesn't happen overnight, but in small steps, things are beginning to get better for Dwayne. Advice. You always have the ability to trigger positive change in your life by choosing a better feeling thought in any given situation. Be aware of the stories you tell yourself and upgrade them into ones that get you closer to where you would like to be, instead of keeping you stuck where you are. The law of perpetual transmutation of energy states that everything around us is in constant flux. You can't see all of those changes because many of them exist at the cellular or atomic level, but they keep going on regardless. The reason that this is so important to be aware of with this law is that it helps you see how you have the ability to trigger positive change. Specifically, how high vibrations can trigger improvements in low vibrations. For instance, if you are vibrating at a low frequency, exposing yourself to the high frequency of a cheerful, encouraging friend, you will naturally trigger energy transmutation in you. This law states that on an energetic level, everything within the universe is continually evolving or fluctuating. Every action is preceded by a thought, with thoughts themselves having the ability to eventually manifest in our physical reality. Ever been around a negative person and felt your own positivity depleting? That's one example, but it can also work the opposite way. Higher frequencies transmute lower ones when applied with intention. Knowing this, we can actively seek to uplift negative energy around us with our thoughts and actions. This law means that even the smallest action can have a profound effect. Like the seed of a mighty tree holds all its promise in its tiny shell, you also have the power within you to move mountains. To put the law into practice, it is recommended to do small things that will uplift your energies every day. Whether it is singing in the shower, dancing like nobody is watching, or anything that works for you. Remember, small changes equal big results. I have started doing that whenever I catch myself, especially basically thinking the world revolves around me. Like, for example, I was coming home from work today and I live in a circle. You can go in a complete circle off of my street, off of a hill. And there was an old man driving in front of me in a big, huge truck. And he lives just a few stories up from me. And I was in a bit of a hurry. And he decided not just to pull into his driveway in front of me, but he wanted to back in. And for a moment, I was like, really? You gotta park fancy with that big ass truck, old man, you know. And then I stopped myself and I was like, why is this upsetting me? Just because he wants to pull into his parking spot and back up? This isn't my world and everything revolves around it. So I really try to catch myself with the little things to start with every day throughout my day. Whenever I'm having a thought, whenever anything occurs to me that isn't kind, I really, really make an effort to correct myself and have grace for myself as well, because I'm just a work in progress, like all of us are. All right, and the last chapter we'll read. Law number 9, the law of reality. It's all relative. Imagine this. You wake up early in the morning and find it unusually bright. Only then did you realize that the iPhone's alarm did not ring. The cable was not plugged in correctly, and now the phone is dead. You are half an hour late for work. You struggle, but you always make time for your favorite daily ritual, which makes everything better. Morning American coffee from a local cafe. But today, of course, it was Dwayne, the half-wit barista, who messed up your order again, and you ended up with a cup of mocha. Then, while you were rushing to work, you receive a speeding ticket. Most people will agree that this is a bad start to the day. But George, the homeless man sitting outside the cafe that you may not even have noticed, would be happy to swap place with you at the time. He has no bed to wake up in, no iPhone to charge, no job to be late for, no money for coffee, or a car to speed in. If you look at what you have in life, you'll always have more. If you look at what you don't have in life, you'll never have enough. Oprah Winfrey. This law reminds us that experiences are not good or bad. They are neutral. It is our human perceptions, our emotions, thoughts, and judgments that evaluate experiences, and comparing them is the reason for creating good and bad labels. Now, I am not saying that we all go out and remove our brains, but the law is a reminder of the power of perception. Use this insight to your advantage. A good or bad situation is not a fundamental truth. It is just a perception you experience based on comparing this experience with something else. Another good one I like is that common sense is not so common. And you know what I thought the other day? It's your way of thinking that something is common sense, or even the majority, but to the person who to you is not displaying common sense, perhaps to them it is common sense. I felt very, very insightful at that moment. And I do think that is true. I think it's true. You don't have to think it's true, but I do. And you know what? Looking at it like that allows me to have more grace for people, because I don't think like other people and other people don't think like me. And for all I know, I'm doing something and someone's going, does that woman not have any common sense? Right? And I have no idea of it, just the way they may not, or they may, but it's how they like it. And if that's what makes them happy, then you know what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Advice. Looking at a bad situation from a different perception can actually help you transmute it into gratitude. No matter how bad it is for you, someone will always be in a worse situation. Rather than feeling like a victim, reframe it to feel gratitude. When looking at things in isolation, the law of relativity is related to the neutrality of things. Therefore, no particular person, experience, emotion, or behavior is evaluated as good or bad before comparing it to something else. For example, you may think you are poor, but it may also be because you have 3 wealthy uncles. By keeping this law in mind, you can pay attention to the fact that no matter what happens to you, there will always be multiple perspectives. Trying to see through these different perspectives can make you more grateful and can also tell you where you can improve in your life. This law states that we tend to compare things in the world, but in reality, everything is neutral. Relativism exists in everything. Ultimately, meaning comes down to our perspective and our perception. Applying this law can help us understand the most difficult part of our lives with greater compassion. For example, if we feel ungrateful about our living situation, it could be because we are comparing our arrangements with someone else's. On the other hand, it would be better if we appreciate what we have without having to compare it with something else. There is nothing good or bad, nor is anyone born good or bad. Everything is a series of expressions, and there is more than one point of view for any situation or challenge. In other words, we are the ones who give meaning to things, so we can choose to see things as bad or as good for us. All right. So in the next video, in the next segment, I will read the last 4 sections. So that'll be the last 3 laws and then the conclusion. As I read the introduction, as I always do, so that just rounds it out. And then we will finish this book quite quickly, and I will have to come up with another one a lot sooner than I thought I would, but that's okay. If you guys have any suggestions for books that you think might be a good read for more people than not, like something that would resonate with a broader audience, more people, not something so concentrated, please let me know. I would really like some suggestions. So until next time, thank you so much for joining me. Please like, subscribe, comment, share if you feel that this video would be helpful for somebody or they would enjoy it. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of those around you. I will see you again soon for the last portion of this book. Bye-bye.